Hello all. If you're viewing this, that's because you're soon to be a student of Phil 1204, Knowledge and Reality. This video is going to be a basic tutorial of how the course will be run by a scholar. My name is Amiel Bernal, and I'm a recent graduate from the Virginia Tech Philosophy Master's Program, so I've been given the opportunity to teach an online course, which should be interesting. So let's just run through the basics here. So presumably you can see this screen view, and here is Phil 1204, Knowledge and Reality. This is a scholar site that's still a work in progress, so don't take this as the final draft, but it's just an initial gloss of what will to come, and it has the essentials that we can talk about, so you can just get a sense of how things are going to operate. So most importantly is we'll just go directly to the syllabus, and I will read out these sort of things. You know, this is syllabus day. Think about it that way, because this stuff will be very relevant, and because, you know, right. So, Knowledge and Reality, 1204. This is just basically a survey course of some major philosophical issues, largely to do with reasoning in general, and then what's called epistemology. And all epistemology means is the study of knowledge and knowing. So what does it mean to know something? Is knowledge to justify true belief? Is there more to it than that? And then we'll do a little bit of metaphysics and philosophy of mind at the end. Metaphysics is what sorts of things there are in the world, in the most basic way, and philosophy of mind is what's going on with the mind. What is a mind? Can it be realized by computers? Other sorts of interesting questions like that. So there's only going to be a couple of required texts, and they're really cheap. I just looked on Amazon, and I think you can get for like $2.50 on Amazon, and I think writing philosophy is a little bit more, but overall they're both perfectly reasonable. So look for those and get those as soon as possible, because that will be the early readings that we do. And then the later readings that we'll do, I'll post shortly, but they'll just be available under the resources tab. So that there'll just be additional tabs here, and they'll say reading for week 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And here's the summer reading schedule, which we'll get to in a minute, but that'll be useful too. So the grading policies, I'm going to be very methodical here because this is important. I don't want people just losing points because they're not clear on grading policy. So the total grade is out of 1,000 points. I could probably rephrase that. So your total grade is out of 1,000 points. Could just, you know, remove a 0 and think of it as being out of 100 points. Same difference. So there's 100 points for each of 5 total weekly writings. So on every Friday at 9 p.m. at the latest, you'll turn in a weekly writing, which just generally covers the material for that week in terms of a summary, and then just some critical engagement with the text, some sort of objection or something to that effect. And since this is sort of in lieu of any sort of test or midterm, and because it's a major portion of your grade, I expect these to be pretty well written. You know, take some time, maybe, you know, give it a couple hours. It's only 600 words, but rather than being lengthy, it should just be very accurate and polished. And I think that's fairly clear enough. I mean, there's a little bit more details you can fill in. Quizzes will be weekly as well, but they'll be on Sunday instead, so give you a couple days to catch up. And those will be in the tests and quizzes menu. So I just started making the first one. It's right here. So there'll just be a few questions covering some of the material. It's just kind of a different way to, you know, assess if you read everything, and to just keep us up to date. I feel it's frequent in these sorts of online courses for people to procrastinate and then try to do a whole ton of material at the end, and this kind of prevents that from happening. So if you just chug along, most of your grade will be dealt with before the end, so you don't have to do a crazy amount of work in a week, which isn't good for anyone. And then the last assignment is a final paper, and so this will be the only major writing assignment. It'll be due July 5th at 5 p.m. I'm leaving. I'm going to Hong Kong on July 8th to work, and if you don't turn it in by the 6th, I won't be able to grade it. So, because I need some time to actually be able to grade and enter grades and that sort of thing. But after July 5th, you're done. And so this will be a relatively quick course, 5.5, 6 weeks. With that in mind, I do intend to cover pretty much a whole semester's worth of material for a standard 3-credit course class. So there's this legend that online classes are easier, and that's not my intention. It's just quicker and more intensive and focused, but we'll basically be doing all the same readings that we would anyways. It's just you have a reading every week as opposed to 2 or 3 times a week, or every day of the week as opposed to 2 or 3 times. In any case, the final paper will be 2,000 words approximately. It can be somewhat over or somewhat below that, but if it's going to be drastically above or below, that could be a problem. So use your judgment, but it's a major part of your grade, so below 1,500 words will probably be a problem. And here's the grading scale. So these are supposed to be hard cutoffs, unless the class average is just crazy low or something like that. This is intended to be how the cookie crumbles. So if you end up with a 929 points and a half or something like that, that's an A minus. So the rounding up won't occur, just simpler that way. And then I don't have to be doing inconsistent standards for different people and just giving people points away because they asked more questions or emailed me. It's just a very easy way to do it. And if there's any serious problems or you're really worried about it, you can plan ahead and maybe ask for an extra credit opportunity. I'm open to that possibility. It would just be something that I'd make available to everyone, so it's not special treatment. So late assignment policy, for each day that an assignment is late, it loses 1/3 of a letter grade, so that is a plus or a minus. So an A becomes an A minus if it's 1 day late. A B plus paper would become a B minus paper if it were 2 days late, right? So what goes to a B and then a B minus. Office hours, I'll log on to Scholar every morning just to do some work, to check up on things, to grade, those sorts of things. And so you can access me, you can chat with me on the chat room. So I think I can just, hello all, let's chat. Yeah, so we can just chat like that. If you have any general questions or concerns or something you want to talk about with the week's readings, I'm available at that time for that. And then, of course, if you're in Blacksburg, we could meet in person. I'll be living in Blacksburg through the duration of this course. I can also just respond to emails if you prefer emails, or I could Skype. There's my Skype information. So whichever you're most comfortable with, I'm willing to be flexible. And since this is basically my full-time job, I can just negotiate my time accordingly. And so I can meet whenever you are available. I have a much more flexible schedule. I just have work to do continuously. Course policies. So pretty much the course is going to be run through Scholar. Depending on what sort of videos I upload and that sort of thing, we might have to, I might put links and resources that take you to YouTube or something like that. But pretty much the central hub will be Scholar, and then we'll branch out from there. So check back frequently. This will also be how I email you and those sorts of things. And then I'm not going to get into the plagiarism thing too in depth. You've probably all heard this spiel before, but don't plagiarize. It's just not really worth it. It's kind of defeating the purpose of getting an education. Here's the honor code, and hopefully this doesn't become an issue. But just know that, you know, those sorts of factors are considerable. So going into the resources tab, the only thing I have up so far is the summer reading schedule, and soon to come will be additional, like the weekly readings for everything except for the Lewis Vaughan book and the Simon Blackburn book that I already referenced. And yeah, I'll just create PDFs or something like that. Oh, and it makes me download it. So if we look at this, this is the readings by week. So as you'll note, it's pretty quick turnaround, only 6 weeks total. So I'll just broadly overview what we intend to do, and then probably end this video. So for week 1, it's just a general introduction to philosophy. How do you read philosophy? What's an argument? What does it mean for something to be valid and sound or cogent? These sorts of concepts that are used in philosophy in terms of logical argumentation. That will be the focus, just so you have the tools to assess everything else in this course and in life in general. You know, it's good to be able to identify fallacies because they come up frequently. And then after we do this initial sort of framework, we'll move on to one of the most famous philosophers. Is a guy in the 1700s, 1600s, 17th century, René Descartes, and he was the famous "I think therefore I am" guy, if you're familiar with that at all. So we'll be doing some readings of his as a sort of introduction to the early modern Western tradition, like the beginning of the Enlightenment is often when that period is referred to as the early modern period. And then the Simon Blackburn book can be subsidiary. Blackburn talks about stuff in the Meditations in a much more modern and straightforward way. And so you'll have the Blackburn book, and then I'll post the Descartes stuff in the resources tab. And then after we do Descartes, we'll do Hume, who was kind of had a competing worldview. He was famous for being an empiricist, so he wanted to use the sense faculties to generate all of the knowledge we have, all of the ideas we have come from experiencing things in the world, and that's how we put together ideas. Whereas Descartes would differ and say, in general terms, we can know things without reference to the senses. We can just use our reasoning faculties, and that'll be sufficient. So that's kind of the empiricist versus rationalist divide is a pretty standard way to run one of these sorts of courses, and it's an interesting view in terms of deciding how we are to know things, because it's still relevant today. I mean, science has largely went to the empirical method, although there's still vestiges of rationalism in mathematics and philosophy and logic. And then as we move on, we'll branch out a little bit more, and we'll just hit on some interesting general topics that I think people will hopefully be interested in. And so epistemology, as I noted once before, is the study of knowledge and knowing. So there's a series of papers on epistemology. So there's Hume again. This is of miracles. It's his argument against why we shouldn't believe in miracles. Plato, who's a famous ancient Greek philosopher, his big piece on knowledge. Pretty foundational text. Edmund Gettier, this is a famous paper as well. It just asks if justified true belief is sufficient to constitute knowledge. And then William James tries to provide an alternative conception of what it means for something to be true that isn't kind of along the lines of the historical predecessors. So just a brief survey of epistemology, just in case any of that stuff interests you, and so you have some basic background knowledge in the field. These are the most seminal papers probably. So yeah, you can be conversationally proficient if nothing else, and it's a good exercise in analyzing arguments and that sort of thing. And then week 5 is metaphysics. Again, it's sort of a survey, but this time metaphysics has more to do with what sorts of things there are, what sorts of things are real. So one of the famous works in this regard is Plato's Allegory of the Cave. which we'll read. So it's a nice little story that's supposed to be philosophically poignant. And then another really interesting one is J.L. Mackey's Evil and Omnipotence. It's about the problem of evil. And Simon Blackburn has some interesting discussions in Think, so hold on to that Think book for a little while longer about primary and secondary qualities, and we'll get into what that means. So basically the question is whether our sense perceptions are real. Is there a real thing in the world that we would call delicious, or is that just sort of a subjective thing? Is the chocolate being delicious, or whatever, pick your favorite food, is that a fact about the world, or is that just a subjective sort of thing that we make believe is true and false? And then Thomas Nagel's What Is It Like to Be a Bat is an interesting case for why beings might be sentient, like bats, and about what science can tell us about consciousness. And then another interesting one is the brain's mind a computer program? Another sort of analysis of artificial intelligence and issues related to that. And then the final week is yet to be determined. I might see where people are interested in and decide some things accordingly, but this will probably be more of a philosophy of mind week, where we talk about some other ideas in that field, and then probably have less readings so that you guys can finish your papers in a less stressed context. So that's the basic rundown. In terms of, I already noted where tests and quizzes will be, right? So your first quiz will be there. Student view is different than my view, so. Well, I guess I haven't. I'll publish that and it'll be visible soon. And then things are to be submitted via Dropbox. So those weekly writings that I noted, you can go in and you'll have your name, right? And just like under mine, I can upload a file, and then you'll find whatever file you want uploaded, and submit it there. So those sorts of things should be straightforward enough. Yeah, I think that's all I need to cover for this one. So thank you for your time. And in general, I'll try to keep all of my lectures relatively brief like this, 20-25 minutes, because I know it's hard to just listen to someone when you can't interact. But with that in mind, I guess there'll be more independent work on your end. You'll have to read a good amount pretty much every day to keep up. Some of the early readings are pretty brief, but as we get on, you expect an hour plus of reading every day, and then the associated assignments on top of that. So if you have any questions, please email me, abernal@vt.edu. And in general, I look forward to running this course and look forward to additional videos regarding course content. All right.